The Cambridge Center for Palestine Studies is delighted to be holding this series about the ongoing events in Palestine in general and in the Gaza Strip in particular. Within the framework of this program, we interview a wide variety of internationally renowned academics, experts, including diplomats and media practitioners. Today, in this episode, we are proudly delighted to be hosting. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cambridge Center for Palestine Studies. And within the framework of our Palestine-Gaza series, we are delighted to be hosting internationally renowned academics and experts, diplomats and media practitioners, checking the take on the ongoing events. Today, in particular, in this episode, we are professionally proud and morally delighted to be hosting His Excellency Dr. Manuel Hassassian, the Palestinian ambassador in Denmark. Professor Hassassian served before Denmark in Hungary and before in London for nearly 10 years. Before that, he was the vice president of Bethlehem University in Bethlehem, Palestine. We shall be discussing a wide variety of issues ranging from local, regional, and international events that are taking place now with regards to Palestine, and certainly trying to benefit from Professor Hassassian's expertise in academia, because he is also a professor of political science, as well as a practitioner serving as a Palestinian diplomat around the world. Professor Hassassian, hello and good afternoon from Cambridge, England, UK. We shall be more than pleased to hear your take on the events where you can freely shed light on issues that you see fit. So please, the mic and screen are yours.
Thank you, Dr. Makram, for inviting me for your show. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you. And thank you for giving me the floor so as you could portray to the world what is happening in Palestine. Let me start first by saying, I am really baffled and shocked to see the Western world so silent about the carnage and the heinous crimes that have been committed against the Palestinian people for the last 56 years, let alone the latest onslaught on Gaza, is a badge of dishonor on the international community that has been silenced in relation to what is happening today on the ground. We have seen Western countries siding and rallying to go to Israel in terms of supporting them and in terms of giving them the green light for defending themselves, as if the occupier should defend itself from the occupied, and it's not the other way around. It is so shameful that to see the programmatic and well-rounded, I would say, schematically, the Western press and media that has been exploited by Israeli propaganda to twist the facts and to put the onslaught and all the criticism against the Palestinian people rather than the other way around. You are yourself an expert, doctor, in political media. And we could, of course, gain a lot of knowledge from you as how media could be an effective instrument in gearing the wars and in trying to distort the facts on the ground by trying more or less to flagrantly twist and try to create a narrative that is in total contradiction of the politique réelle and what is going on the ground. We have to make a distinction basically between governments and people. You have seen, and you are a thorough observer, Dr. Makram, when you see all Europe, I'm not going to talk about the Middle East, but all Europe, the people went on the street. And they have been every day since the onslaught demonstrating at all sites, in front of parliaments, in front of ministries of foreign affairs, and what have you. So the distinction is quite clear that the people of Europe are with the individual and the collective rights of the Palestinian people, and with their plight also for independence and having their own independent state. However, the discord between the official position and that of the public opinion is a shameful perspective for us to understand why governments are not responding to the people's demands. And if they are democracies, how can democracies support state terrorism? We don't understand. I'm a little bit confused. I studied democracy in political theory, but I can't understand the fascism of democracy in trying to support the occupier against the occupied. The asymmetry is so evident and it's so explicit. It could be portrayed by the systematic policies taken by the Israelis since the occupation in 1967, let alone we are talking about the 75 years of Nakba and Hijra and what have you. And since then, we haven't seen serious positions by the West in implementing all kinds of UN resolutions by the Security Council or General Assembly when it comes to the state of Israel and treating Israel above international law. How could that be in a democratic system that allegedly believes in democracy, yet we believe that this is a total hypocrisy, because the West has shown just in the very near future their position on the Ukraine war, where they have rallied politically, media, financially in supporting Ukraine, regardless who started the war. And here I'm not going to give my opinion, but all I can say that the distinction between the rallying to support Ukraine's war in contradistinction with that of Palestine is quite evident. So what do you call that? We call it hypocrisy. We call it national interest of post-colonialism that is still evident in a different way than 19th century, 18th century colonialism. We are still living under colonialism and imperialism, and this is how it has been perceived by the peoples in the Middle East. This is one of the longest occupations in modern history. We have been struggling for the last 100 years to get the same principle of self-determination, which the entire world, which entire peoples have achieved so far, except us. Why? Because our eyes are not blue, because our complexion are not white. What is the secret that the Palestinians, who have all the rights in the world to support themselves against and to defend themselves against occupation, for their inalienable rights, and for the Nakba that has befell them in 1948, and for the millions of Palestinians who are living in the diaspora, not having the first self-determination objective, i.e., the resolution of right of return. Saying all this, what is Israel has been doing since the PLO has signed the agreement of Oslo? The Oslo Accords had brought nothing except calamity to the Palestinian people. We have seen the West Bank totally divided into slices of Swiss cheese. no geographic contiguity whatsoever. All these settlements, along with 750,000 settlers, today reside in the occupied territories of the West Bank. All the cities are subjected to hot pursuit by the Israelis. In other words, they go in, they incarcerate, they kill, they shoot, extrajudicial killing, desecrate our holy sites, being Al-Aqsa, Holy Sepulchre, St. James, and what have you, allowing settlers to act as hoodlums and with gun-ho mentality, shooting with an extrajudicial point-blank Palestinian civilians, embarking on a systematic policy that is directly to push the Palestinians to leave the country. Israel is very obvious in its policies that it wants the land grab, the land theft, it wants the geography and not the demography of Palestine. They are trying to create facts on the ground that could be irreversible, even if we go back to the negotiating table, which I doubt in the very near future.
Professor, may I kindly, just because you have mentioned here two subjects, the first one with regards to public opinion and the official position of European governments, and on the other hand, you move to the situation on the ground. If I may please pick up the first point, I understand that you made the distinction between the overwhelming public support of the populace of the nations in Europe, and they are on the side and on actually supportive on the side of the Palestinians. But on the other hand, I can understand from you as well, and you are sitting in a European capital, that the official European regime is actually not in favor of Palestine. My question to you, are we talking about a official European support wall to wall with Israel, or can we divide this support into categories?
Well, actually, I don't want basically to say in its entirety Europe as governments. We have also to make distinctions, Dr. Makram, between parliamentarians and those official in government. There is also a wide wedge there between the public opinion of parliamentarians who speak in the name of the people, and that is consistent with what we see in the public media when the population, let's say in Denmark or in Czech Republic or in Moldova and what have you, in comparison with the position of their governments, they are in total contradiction. But however, when we take it, as you said, government by government, there are some governments who are saying that Israel has the right to defend itself, but humanitarian assistance should be given to the Palestinians. They're trying to hold the magic wand from the middle, and they're trying to be a little bit apologetic to the Palestinians. But wholeheartedly, they are all for Israel's right to defend itself. We haven't seen condemnation from governments to the daily atrocious crimes committed by the state terrorists and the warplanes of Israel. We haven't seen that condemnation. But we have seen members of parliament individually supporting the Palestinians. We have seen influencers. We have seen lobbyists. We have seen public opinion pollsters, yes, from Europe coming forward in terms of supporting the humanitarian case of the Palestinians, in support of their inalienable rights for independence, and in asking for a ceasefire so as humanitarian assistance could go into through the Rafah border, crossing into Palestine. But we haven't seen categorical position by condemning the terror against civilians by official governments in the European arena.
In your opinion, where does the definition of self-defense start and when does it end as far as the European position is concerned?
Well, first of all, we have to talk about resistance. Resistance under occupation is a legitimate right, and it is being guaranteed by UN and League of Nations clauses. It means when we talk about self-defense, it is the occupied who has the right to self-defense, and not the occupier who claims to be the offensive onslaught to ask for self-defense. This is not self-defense. 56 years 75 years of occupation has not been self-defense, has been trying to eradicate and decimate the entire Palestinian people in order to grab the land. And so far, we haven't reached any place, even through negotiations, through political accommodation, besides the historic compromise that we made in 1988. Look what we are now. We are at a stalemate. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. I cannot see any kind of prospects for stability. This is now a struggle for existence, for survival. It's no more territoriality. We are struggling now as Palestinians to be alive because nobody is helping us in putting an end to the Israeli occupation and this war crimes that has been committed for the last 56 or 75 years.
You said that you are puzzled because you are unable to explain the blanket support by the Western capitals and official Western regime. But if we try to disentangle it, would you say that this is down to the influence of Israel's lobby in these capitals, whether in the media or in the financial market?
It goes without saying, Dr. Makram. You know, lobbyists, pressure groups, influencers play a significant role in trying to mold certain kind of a propaganda to a regime. We know that the influence of the Zionist lobby in the United States, it's unbelievable. In Europe, the same story, because the lobbyists are basically dependent on to what extent the Jewish minorities have total control of the media, of the financial institutions, banking, education, universities, pressure groups, and what have you. And the lobbyists basically try to put that framework that these Jewish communities have been an integral part of the decision-making process in Europe. And that's why they are involved in being members of parliament, in government, and what have you. So you're talking about a lobby that is protecting and trying to portray the image of Israel through the Jewish people who are involved in the decision-making process as part and parcel of the political systems in Europe. That's why the European government cannot really try to exonerate themselves from the public interest of, let's say, Danish Jewish working in the parliament and as a minister in the government. So it is difficult, basically, to try to exonerate them from any kind of influence when it comes, basically, to the question of Israel. And this is where the tricky question is. Public opinion is totally controlled today by the fabrication of news. And there are many European, American broadcasters, journalists who are paid by the Israelis to smear the image of Palestine and to portray the image of the victims, i.e. Israel.
Where does the progressive left-wing Jewish minority stand? We saw that they held a big demonstration in New York, and they are taking part in other demonstrations across the globe against the practices of the Israeli occupation. Do you think that there is a need to collaborate further with progressive Jews, or do you think that they will not be able to depart from the Jewish consensus wherever they are?
Well, actually, this is a very good and serious question. Yes, we have to consolidate our, our power, our relations with all kinds of, Jewish communities that are anti-Zionist. But unfortunately, these Jewish communities are still marginalized in Europe and in that of the United States. Yes, it is growing. It will take some time. Now we started hearing vociferous voices coming from them. It is a good indication that the Jewish community is making a distinction between Zionism and Judaism. And they are for a two-state solution. They are for uh, 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 the non-besiegement of the Palestinians in Gaza by the Israelis. They are putting forward certain rhetoric of freedom and independence for the Palestinians. But I think this is still a minority, a small minority, that cannot still be influential in capital countries of the West in changing and making a difference, like AIPAC and many other Zionist lobby who are entrenched into the political system that makes the decisions all across the world. I'm not surprised tomorrow President Biden to claim that Israel is the 51st state of the United States. I'm not surprised because this is how they are acting.
Speaking of the United States, you spent many years in the States, you studied there, and you still visit the States. Is there a similar sort of structure to Europe there in terms of administration and public opinion, or is it different from Europe and its public opinion, which is in general in favor of Palestine? Is it the same in the States or is it different?
Well, when we talk about the government level, I think it is one and the same. We cannot contest the fact that there is a difference between, what the European governments stand and that of America. Dr. Makram, that Europe is totally under the wing of the United States of America. And the directives even of the polemical rhetoric that comes out from Europe is being dictated verbatim by the United States of America. You know how the Americans, before the onslaught, before any war, they try to galvanize and mobilize all their media support to try to give the bad image about a country that they are going to invade or to interfere and what have you. And this is what we have seen. America from day one has been, helping the Israeli image in the Western world, and has been distorting the facts by giving false facts and fabricating it and trying to put it in a way through international podcasters, anchor people, very famous people, and it's so disgusting. Yeah, Dr. Makram, I have had 26 interviews so far. All of them, they start, do you condemn Hamas? Do you condemn Hamas? This is the tagline that the United States has basically instructed the whole world to interview people and to put us on our toes to say that Hamas is a terrorist organization. Why? Because they want to justify to the world what they're doing in Gaza. And they want to justify also that any country that comes to the help of the Palestinians in Gaza, the fleets are there, 20,000 or whatever, 2,000, as the Americans claim, of the Marines are ready, and all these frigates and USS Eisenhower and what have you is flexing muscle to show to what extent America can go in defending Israel. How could we take the Americans serious to be a third party to alleviate the pressure and pain of the Palestinians while they are totally in partisanship with Israel in the fight against the Palestinians and in bombarding and killing journalists, their families, innocent people, civilians. 800 people yesterday were killed. How could humanity justify this genocide, if not Holocaust? Let me go a little bit further. When people are in their buildings living and bombs, including white phosphorus bombs, have been launched against them, what do you call that? What does, show me a definition that reflects this is self-defense.
Your Excellency, do you not see, or possibly you do see, any difference between a conservative administration and a democratic administration in the States?
In French, we say, c'est la même chose, Abu Khalid. It's tweedledum, tweedledee. Wars that have been waged in the Middle East and all over the world were waged by Democrats, less than the Republicans, just to give you an example. However, when we talk about parties, show me the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans when it comes to foreign policy. Show me the difference between Labour Party in England and that of the Conservatives. And we have seen the head of the MP, the
You mean
Labour.
You mean the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer?
Yes, 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 yes. Look at his statements, look at his support, look how he is even trying to divide Labour on the issue of this latest war on Gaza. I mean, it's unbelievable that we cannot even categorically say that we have Democrats on our side and not Republicans, and that we have Labour on our side and not Republicans. Labour, look at the political stand of Labour today in opposition. Are they opposing Prime Minister of England today or the UK in Parliament, as it should be, in terms of unequivocal support given to Israel, in terms financially, militarily, and what have you, and visiting, Israel first, and then lip service going to President Abbas to tell him that he is concerned about the humanitarian assistance. This is hypocrisy, my friend.
So in terms of influencing the American or even the European political system, do you see in any way, and since we're talking about power structure, do you see any role that the Arab world, let's leave aside for the moment the Palestinian arena, if we talk about the Arab world, Arab regimes, Arab natural resources, funds, do you think that they can play a role in the current circumstances?
If they have the guts to say no to America and enough for Israel, yes, they can play a very important role. They have the oil, they have the natural resources, they have the demographic factor, they have the media. They can play an instrumental role. But beyond sympathy and empathy, beyond rhetorical sloganeering of supporting the Palestinians, we have seen nothing. What are the pressures they have been putting on Israel or the United States to stop this carnage? Have we seen an instrumental? But we have seen attempts by certain Arab governments to take the scene by trying to release hostages, but not to stop the carnage, in order basically to show their service to Israel and to that of the Americans. It is unfortunate that I say this.
I understand. What do you think is to be done if we talk about the Palestinian leadership? It's a broader term, or let's just try to narrow it down. What should the Palestinian political system be doing now, do you think?
The Palestinian political system is a fragile system, given the practices and the systematic policies of the Israeli government, and that weaken basically the leadership in controlling, at least in terms of security, the occupied West Bank, because Israel wanted that, and they have rendered the political system being ineffective in trying to provide that. Secondly, I think it is high time now that we should have a national consensus. We should have all the parties, resistance, and civil society, and communities coming together, because this is a war of existence now, to put our minor contradictions on the side and to commit ourselves to the defense of our land, at least in terms of political rhetoric. We should be one and the same, to defend ourselves and to work together in trying to change the modus operandi in the West Bank, and let alone in Gaza, and try to be big influencers in media, and to come forward first to stop completely communication with Israel, no security relationship with Israel, and they should be more vociferous, which they are, when it comes to the international community. The president and many government officials have been in contact with all UN officials, organizations, governments in the world, pleading for humanitarian assistance and a ceasefire. They have been doing that. But we need more than that at this period of time, where we should not try to put our minor contradictions as major contradictions, because we are one and the same when it comes to Israel. No Palestinians should stay on their land, and this is the strategic thinking of the present-day government. They want to evacuate Gaza, they want to decimate the people, they want to forcefully diasporize them, and they want also to make the West Bank ineffective by ceding it in the very near future.
So, Your Excellency, you teach as well courses on conflict resolutions. How do you think the whole situation will be developing? How can we move from the current situation ahead? What are the next steps that should be taken, or how the whole conflict will be evolving?
Since you mentioned conflict resolution, basically, let me share with you a theory that has been applied for so many years, and I've taught that theory for 26 years at the University of Maryland at College Park. And this theory is called ARIA. And please bear with me, because that will answer your question, Dr. Makram. ARIA stands for Adversarial, Reflective, Integrative, and Action Plan. So we use the concept of ARIA, the musical aria that soothes you, to come up with conflict resolution, and not crisis management or conflict management. It's a resolution. The A stands for adversarial, which means that let's assume today what is happening in the United Nations is a perfect example. We have the Palestinian ambassador, we have the Israeli ambassador. They give their statements, they don't listen to each other. There is the dialogue of the deaf. Everybody wants to score a point in order to show the members of the United Nations that they have the right and not the other one. So in the final analysis, this dialogue that we call the deaf dialogue comes up with nothing, except that both run out of gas and stop saying what they have to say. Finito la musica. The second step comes here, which is the reflexive stage. And that reflexive stage in itself is the psychological factor that prompts the individual, the negotiator, to go into self-searching, soul-searching, trying to understand, was I an idiot to come up with all these lies, with fabrications, just to win a point, but what does that mean to me in terms of credibility, legitimacy, when I go to official negotiations? So that prompts, on both sides, I'm saying, that prompts to go into the third stage, ARIA, the integrative stage. The integrative stage is the fact that you search here for common grounds and you look at the glass as half full. Let us not criticize each other. Let us look at the positive factors where we can converge our national interest in solving this conflict, in conflict resolution rather than crisis management. And then both parties start to prioritize consensually what is to start first. Shall we start with the concept of sovereignty in Jerusalem, or shall we start with the structural, functional parts of both cities and go from down to up until you reach that stage where sovereignty won't be a non-starter, but a solution to the issue of Jerusalem? The same way goes to the 6 intractable issues, which you are familiar and expert on.
But don't you think that there is
Let me finish. Let me finish. The A. The action plan is to come up with a consensus by both parties to prioritize what are the basic needs to reach the conflict resolution, i.e., the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. I rest my case by answering your question.
That's okay. This is quite comprehensive. However, may I ask you, does this plan need a mediator?
Yes, definitely. Let me tell you, with my expertise on 52nd track negotiations, we have applied the ARIA with public officials, with military people, with journalists, with students. Eventually, we come up with an action plan. However, when it reaches the official track, it is a non-starter. And that's why, I mean, it can be done if we can change the state of mind that we have and look positively that down the pipeline, everybody is a loser. But if we try to think now, nobody makes concessions except when they are at the peak of their power. This is the chance for Israel to make a concession and sit and negotiate and try to come up with a resolution that will be satisfactory for both sides. There is no way Palestinians will accept occupation. It is inevitable that they will have their independent Palestinian state. So what we are urging, we are now at the adversarial stage. We have to move into the soul searching once there is ceasefire, and then try to assess the magnanimity of this war locally, regionally, and internationally. And you know, Dr. Makram, you are an alert observer of what is happening today in terms of public opinion in the world and what this conflict can really produce if it continues non-stopped by the international community. Now, it might evolve into a regional or maybe, God forbid, a third world war.
So, despite what you have mentioned, it may well be, as far as I can understand from your explanation, that the gap will be widened and then a regional war will erupt.
Yes, I think if Israel continues with its policies, America will reach a point that they have to take a side. I like when Afif says we cannot continue to be the object of history, but we should be the subject of history. I think if the United States now controls the situation, it will boost its image internationally. And if it pushes Israel to come to the negotiating table, I think the chances of a regional war, the chances of international war will be completely limited, and if not non-existent.
Yesterday, as you must have heard, the UN Secretary General made quite a distinct statement at the UN, which caused an uproar from the Israeli representative. But we're not talking about the representative of the Israeli occupation. We're talking about the role of the UN. How do you envisage the role of the UN in the next few weeks?
Yani, first of all, the role of the UN is to achieve a ceasefire and to achieve humanitarian assistance by opening, the borders. They could use their good offices, their influence and what have you, although it is limited politically, but in terms of financially to muster support, to try to organize, as much as they can, support for the Palestinian people in their quest of getting out of this quagmire that has been, going on for 3 weeks. I think Israel has always been a part of the UN with no consideration to its resolutions. When it comes to Israel, they don't care about the UN. They think the UN is insignificant because there is a veto power that always salvages the Israelis' position when it is attacked, or when there is a resolution against Israel by the United States of America. So imagine, they are members of the UN, but they don't believe in the UN, nor they implement the UN. They are above international law, above international humanitarian law, but they have the audacity to criticize the Secretary General Guterres and to ask for his expulsion from his position as Secretary General. Look how this audacity, this arrogance of a country that does not believe in the UN, yet it interferes basically in every statement that comes from the United Nations, which is not convenient to their policies.
If we look now at the conflict in a futuristic perspective, where do you see Palestine in 1 year from now?
As you know, Palestine now in the transition basically of dealing with an apartheid state. Whether we talk about Palestinians in the West Bank, Gaza is a total, category by itself, and whether we talk about the Palestinians living in the occupied, what I call State of Israel. I think this apartheid state, with its policies, is one vent for the Palestinians to gain their independence in the future. Because the world cannot continue to support the hypocrisy of this democracy as an occupier. How could you be a democratic entity while Jaffa Road, which is in Western Jerusalem, occupied, okay, and in East Jerusalem you have a basic distinction there. And I believe actually a year from now, things are going to be clearer. First, we hope that we have national unity government among the Palestinians. We hope that we have consensus. We hope to have the Arab countries and the Islamic countries help us financially, help us in terms of media, power politics, and what have you. We have to see whether Israel's internal contradictions will bear fruit about getting rid of conservative regimes like the one we are witnessing today. And if all these factors put together, I think there is hope. Now I talk, as Antonio Gramsci taught us, pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the goodwill. Now, as a scholar, you are, and myself, we are pessimistic because we are realistic. We look at the politique réelle today and we see what is going on the ground. We cannot but be pessimistic. But the optimism of the goodwill, can Israel survive another 20 years of such an atrocious occupation? Is the Arab world going to be totally fractionalized and divided? Is the 2 billion Muslims are going to sit idle and watch the desecration of the holy sites? Are the Palestinians going to be totally fractionalized, atomized, forever? Is the international community going to bless and continue blessing an apartheid state? And we have seen what happened in South Africa. I think history is on the side of the people and not on the side of the occupiers. It's a matter of time. It's inevitable that the Palestinians will live to see self-determination in creating their entity, their Palestinian state, with East Jerusalem, that's its capital. And there is no concession on that for years to come.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Professor Manuel Hassassian, the current Palestinian ambassador in Denmark, many thanks for these points which have certainly illuminated our ongoing discussions in this series. We wish you the best and hope to see you in future events as well. Many thanks and have a good day.
Thanks to you. Thanks to you, Dr. Makram. Good luck to you with all your ventures.
Thank you. Bye-bye.